All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our session on AI-powered compliance. My name is Dmitry Babayev, and I'm a senior member of the global product marketing team at SAP Concur. My responsibility is over the compliance and risk portfolio here, and well, it's not because I'm just some sort of stickler for compliance. It's really because in this area, we've been able to deliver some amazing technology that's helping a lot of our customers out. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Rahul Vig and Nathanael, and I'll invite them up here in a moment to talk about some of the best practices around artificial intelligence, as well as a look ahead at how generative AI is going to help continue to revolutionize how we manage compliance. But before that, I'm going to kick things off with just talking about some of the challenges we see that many customers are facing with compliance, and also talk about, we'll play a fun little game that I like to call, Can You Beat the AI? So let's get started. One of our goals at SAP Concur is to help build a culture of compliance at our customers' organizations. We find this important because while compliance could mean many different things depending on your business, your industry, your location, when it comes to T&E, a few things that I think most of you will agree with is that compliance mistakes are costly. And while financial impact will certainly be felt today, the reputational impact that it could have on your business could be long-lasting. Global regulations are becoming increasingly complex, and governments around the world are adopting more and more technologies, which is making it that much harder to avoid their watchful eye. And finally, employee buying behavior has changed over the years. Whether it's new hybrid work environments or just new generations entering the workforce, bottom line, change is inevitable. And at the speed at which that change is coming about is only going to increase. So we must embrace that change to not get left behind. For this reason, really the status quo is no longer good enough. Manually auditing expense reports just exposes your business to the very risk that you're trying to avoid. And at the core of the problem is the fact that resources are limited. Manually auditing 100% of expense reports is extremely difficult. And for businesses who submit thousands or even tens of thousands of expense reports per month, that can be almost impossible. And so for this reason, we see companies take one of three approaches when it comes to auditing expense reports. The first one is setting thresholds and only auditing expense reports that may exceed a certain limit or a certain amount. The next is random sampling, where, say, only 1 out of 5 or so expense reports are truly getting audited by your team. And finally, there's a dependency on managers, which I can assure you does not work, because managers approve based on budget and not policy. And trust me when I say this, we have the data to prove it. And I encourage you all, next time you're meeting with your account executive team, ask them to show you your specific data on how many receipts or what % of receipts your managers are actually looking at, because you might find that that data is quite eye-opening. So if done right, the outcomes of a fine-tuned audit and compliance program at your company will provide you with, first, the confidence that your employees are spending within policy. It'll help you ensure receipt validity and gaining the visibility into any mistakes or out-of-policy spend, along with the information to take action before any of those expenses are posted to your financial system. With the increased productivity, you'll be able to expand wherever your business takes you at scale and without overextending your existing resources. And finally, I think one outcome that just often gets overlooked or tossed aside is the employee experience. If done right, you should be able to simplify processes without sacrificing data quality. You should be able to reimburse compliant expenses without delay and make your employees feel valued. And you should be able to educate and train your employees to help them make better decisions in the first place. This all sounds great, right? Well, how do we get there? It may come as no surprise based on the session title, AI is the tool that's going to help us get there. There's certainly been a lot of buzz around artificial intelligence as of late. But at the same time, there's also a lot of fear that AI is going to replace us. So before getting too deep into AI, I'd like to share a quote that I've read recently in a Harvard Business Review article. And that is that AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI. So if you're on board, let's together become humans with AI. Sounds good, right? Well, what does that mean? No, we're not going to be hiring Arnold Schwarzenegger to come help and audit all of our expense reports. Technology is not there, not quite there yet at least. AI is not some critically thinking robot that can do what humans do. Instead, AI looks a little bit more like this. Artificial intelligence is the science of developing algorithms and statistical models that help computer systems perform explicit tasks without explicit instructions. Simply put, you have an input of data coming in. Then there's a network of machine learning models and algorithms that decipher that data and predict the statistical probability of various outcomes. So how do we use this in compliance? The benefit that it creates to us is a set of tools that were built to perform very specific tasks with consistency and better accuracy than we can do as humans alone, thus giving us the power to ensure receipt validity, and not just the amounts and dates on the receipt, but things like the type of receipt as well. It can help make sure that expenses that are posting to your financial systems are mistake-free. It can help make sure that employees are buying within policy before expenses are reimbursed. And it can help us spot patterns and trends that may otherwise be impossible for humans to spot alone, which includes also measuring just KPIs to track your program success overall. So with that in mind, let's play a little game. Here I have an expense report. It's for a typical business trip, around $1,400 in total. These expenses were all paid for out of pocket, and for those of you who rely on threshold-based audits, there's a very good chance that this report would get picked up for an audit. I can guarantee you, though, 100% that there's absolutely nothing wrong with this expense report, and that is because it's my own personal expense report from a recent business trip. And if we let the AI take the wheel here, with tools like Verify, what we can do is validate all of the key things that we're looking for and help get this report reimbursed within a matter of hours instead of days. Something like this should not be a report that your audit team needs to waste time on. With the help of AI, we can clear out the haystack that we're searching for the needle in and instead really start focusing our attention on expense reports that may be problematic. Let's take a look at another example. Just a simple expense report here, a couple line items. Seems normal, right? Well, let's see what the AI has to say. Looks like there was a pattern identified. And from there, it looks like there are actually two similar expense reports that were submitted by this employee. I know it's a little bit of cheating here. There's no way that you would have seen those two expense reports since I didn't show them on the screen before. But what are the chances that your audit staff would have remembered these expense reports from previous submissions? Well, in this one here, what we can find is that all these expenses were submitted within just a little bit over a month. And oddly enough, all the expenses were paid for out of pocket and just below the typical receipt requirement limit. Something like this is a bit more fishy. And even though it's on an expense report that is just a small value, this is something that your audit staff might get more value out of actually auditing and finding potential issues here. The final example I have for you is for a hotel expense in Japan. And while it may be obvious how the AI can help here, some basic receipt validation can certainly be completed even if you're not fluent in Japanese. The amounts clearly match, the dates clearly match. But with solutions like Tax Assurance by Blue Dot, we can use the natural language processing components of artificial intelligence to flag that this is not a compliant receipt for tax reclaim, thus helping reduce the chances of regulatory audits or failed reclaim attempts altogether. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I'll be inviting now Rahul and Nathanael to take us through AI and compliance best practices.
Thank you, Dmitry. Hello, everyone. My name is Rahul Vig, and I'm a Senior Director for Product Management here at Concur, and I look after the product strategy for our expense and invoice solutions. I'm joined today with Nathanael, who is Chief Solutions Ambassador at Oversight. Welcome, Nathanael.
Thank you.
And we're going to have a bit of a chat with Nathanael around how AI plays a part in compliance. So, getting started, Nathanael, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and how you came into the world of AI?
Yeah, good question. So I actually started out with a computer science degree from UC Berkeley, studied artificial intelligence back in the day. And then, about 18 years ago, I was looking for a new company to work for, and I came across Oversight, and I was really surprised by and impressed by the way they were using AI back in the day before AI was cool. So I've been working with AI both from an educational background, but then also using AI in this compliance world. So it's been a great journey so far.
That's great. So we've got an AI veteran here, if I should say that. So why don't you tell us a bit about Oversight? What is the core business problem you're looking at solving, and how you partner with Concur?
So we are a solution extension that works very closely with Concur. So we analyze expenses as they're submitted, identifying both high-risk transactions immediately, anything from duplicates to things that shouldn't be reimbursed. And instead of doing a sample like Dmitry was talking about earlier, the AI is looking at 100% of the transactions all the time, immediately, and providing great benefit, like to the customers who are using it. From a financial standpoint, not only is it reducing the effort of the audit, but actually saving by reducing wasteful spend between 2 to 5%, and reducing the effort to do the audit somewhere between 50 to 80%. So again, having the machine doing a lot of the work, identifying risk that individuals can't see, some of those examples that Dmitry gave, and then also looking at the patterns. And as you communicate these items to the employees, it really helps with what Dmitry was talking about, really the culture of compliance, creating that within the organization. So these are some of the things that Oversight helps with, working with Concur to provide real benefit for customers.
And no wonder we've got a great number of satisfied customers using our joint solution, right?
Absolutely.
So now, in your opinion, what is the place for AI in the world of compliance?
So really, there's multiple layers, right? So AI solves problems that individuals can't find. And really, the way that we approach it with Concur is using both capabilities within Concur and supplementing with capabilities within Oversight. So, basically in the heart of Concur, you have audit rules, right? That help enforce policy. And those are important because as employees are submitting their expense reports, they need to be helped with understanding what the policy is, when receipts need to be applied and when not. And so the audit rules help at that submission point. And then Oversight provides a prepayment audit right after submission. That's where the artificial intelligence can come in and identify high-risk transactions. Things like duplicates you don't want to reimburse, or things that could be providing transactions that would be risky to the organization's reputation, right? Adult venues, spending at things where they shouldn't, focused on single risky transactions. And then after that is post-payment analysis, and that's where really looking at risk across expense reports and identifying patterns that when you look at the single transaction, it might look perfectly okay. But when you see that, wow, they've been buying 5 of these sets of headphones that they need for their home office. Wait, why do they need 5, right? They should only have 1. But over time, it's like they've done it on different expense reports. And so it's those patterns that are identified and its risk. So AI helps with patterns and by simplifying the efficiency of the whole audit process.
That's sort of great. It's amazing how this whole thing comes together. And this is very much the example Dmitry was using about
Absolutely.
the suspicious out-of-pocket check, right?
Yes.
Do you not think humans would be able to do that? Do you actually need AI?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you had, if you had a lot of people, and you knew specifically what you were looking for, yeah, people could find it, right? You unleash, hundreds of people with Excel, they could find stuff. But the thing is, people are constantly coming up with new ways to get around the system, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where AI, it learns what's normal. And since 70% of employees are doing the right thing, they're submitting totally compliant items, and typically about 20% are maybe making mistakes, they don't remember all of the policy, and then you have your 5% who are, well, needing a little help. But the nice thing about that is AI learns from that main group who is doing the right thing, and when it sees things are outside of that behavior, it begins to flag them. And it could be something totally brand new that you've never encountered before. Mm-hmm. So for instance, during COVID, as buying behavior has totally changed, it was starting to alert, hey, what kind of purchase is this? Yep. So that's some of the benefits of AI that is probably stronger than what just a human who's doing lots of things could do.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell us, what are the different kinds of AI technology that you use?
Yeah. And it's important, as we talk about AI, and I know Dmitry in some previous sessions has broken this down, but it's important that people understand that AI isn't one thing. It's not a monolith. It's not only ChatGPT, which is on the headlines. That is an important part. But there's other components, and what's also important to note is that different types of AI really do different things, and they're strong in different things. And so it's important to understand those strengths and to be able to use the different components of AI. So for instance, generative AI, I know you're going to be talking about that coming up. It works great with text and understand policy and communicating things. And then there's what we would call deep learning, and that includes technologies such as computer vision. Like in the old days, there was OCR. OCR was good as a starting point, but it's limited, but computer vision takes machine learning on top of that and is now able to understand text in hundreds of languages and even handwriting, and on receipts identifying pictures and understanding what those pictures are. So it's really the next generation, and that's AI powered, so that's an important component. But you combine that with natural language processing, and then you have a really powerful capability to understand what a receipt is and what things on that receipt are risky or not. So those are components that Concur Detect by Oversight uses. Additionally, machine learning enables the system to take all of the results from previous years and see how things have been scored. Is this a problem or is this not a problem? And it's learned, just like Google Photos learned what is a cat or what is a dog. Yeah. Lots of what's known as labeled data. And so taking that over time, it can now look at a transaction and say, this is risky. Looking at hundreds of pieces of data, this is risky, you better take a look at it. So that's a machine learning aspect. And then as people are using Oversight, Concur Detect by Oversight, it funnels their actual audit changes as they say, yes, this isn't a problem or it isn't. It feeds it back in, and every month it's recalculating and getting smarter. And then finally, expert systems which codify the results of experts across time. I mean, hundreds of forensic auditors and corporate accountants. It's like having a staff of like the best of the best at your company working to resolve your stuff. And then you can set your corporate policy parameters, like what's your receipt threshold, what's your meal spend limit. You set those in there, and now you've got this robotic, automatic team of experts, and you combine that with the artificial intelligence that is doing machine learning and getting smarter. You combine that with the deep learning, looking at receipts and natural language processing, and that gives you such a robust system to identify risk and simply automate and streamline and optimize that whole process.
Wow, this is just amazing, isn't it? Only a veteran could have explained all of these AI components here. But here's a question that a lot of our customers think about in all seriousness. Like, do they need to be cautious of AI?
Yes. I think that Dmitry's quote was excellent. You know, we don't have to be afraid of AI taking our job, but we do have to be afraid of humans who are learning and using it. From the other aspect, AI is not going to come and hunt you down. We're not talking about that kind of thing. But certainly, it is something that we can understand, and it becomes a tool that you and I can use and our customers can use to really do their job more efficiently and find more risks. So, no, nothing to be afraid of. It's something to embrace.
Great. Good to hear that. Maybe just one last thing, Nathanael. What's the strangest thing you've seen people try to expense?
I've got a lot of stories, but here's one that I heard recently. It was just crazy. So there was an employee who was submitting an education expense. So he was submitting training for about 100 people. So it was a training event. And he had like 100 attendees listed. And, you know, they looked kind of okay at face value. And it was like for $10,000. And it was down in Mexico. And the system flagged it as, hey, this location looks a little risky, like it's not a training place. And then secondarily, it said, whoa, these attendees, not all of them, they appear, some of them, to be in different places. And they weren't even physically there. And so it flagged it as risky. And so it turns out that, in fact, none of those attendees were there. They reached out to them and they said, no, we weren't at any training thing in Mexico. And it turned out that it was a strip club. And there was one person, and I don't know what they spent $10,000 on, but it was clearly out of policy.
Wow. I mean, I have one myself, just on that one. I'd seen an expense for someone trying to do an aircraft hire for non-business reasons. Can you imagine that? Someone trying to pay for hiring an aircraft just for personal pleasure. That's it. But it's amazing, you know, how those things work. But hey, Nathanael, thank you so much for this. I'm sure our audience found it really insightful.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rahul.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we heard from Nathanael, we heard from Dmitry on how we're going about using AI today. And I want to take one step forward now, looking into the future. Where is the technology taking us? What can we expect? So Nathanael spoke a little bit about this, but if you go back a few years, AI has been existing for a long time. Go back a few years, and we were primarily looking at things from a statistical standpoint, doing analysis, doing trend analysis, and pattern recognition, and those kinds of things would go in. And then over the last 10 to 15 years, what really took us was machine learning. Not just machine learning, again, a few other things that Nathanael was talking about, but primarily I would say machine learning. And within that, we realized as humans, we couldn't code for everything. So we wanted to make sure that we build machines who could then further write those algorithms that's going to learn, create, adapt. So typical like human traits. You see something, you learn, and then you adapt. That's really what sort of took that word away. And Concur's Expensit is a great example of that. And from there, we moved to the here and now of generative AI. I mean, I guess everyone's heard about ChatGPT, and that's but one player. But that technology itself elevates the business AI to the next level by combining large language models and enterprise data. And at SAP Concur, we are already using this to transform the user experience for multiple of our products to create better business outcomes. So all I would say is that the potential we see for this revolutionary technology is immense. It's a great opportunity for us to build on our long track record of using AI to solve real-world problems. So just staying on that generative AI for a second, I'm sure most people would have used ChatGPT or Google Bard, Microsoft Copilot. Reality is that it's just omnipresent at this point in time, the whole generative AI piece. I've got a bit of a story around this. I went to my friend's wedding anniversary, 25th wedding anniversary, and his children were giving speeches. And his daughter gave a speech which was written using ChatGPT. And she added her own anecdotes, so don't get me wrong. Some people who knew about this turned around and said, oh, she's being lazy. But I was looking at it saying, no, she's being creative. Isn't that the whole point of technology, to sort of help us? When I was growing up, I did not have the luxury of having spell checks or autocorrects. If I had to spell like paleontology, that was on me. I just had to get it right. There's no escape from it. But today, those tools are just there, available to everyone. And that's really what technology is sort of all about. If we talk about Gen AI in particular, what it does over and above other forms of traditional AI is when it provides us with a better picture using context. It does a great job natural language processing, text-to-text generation, text-to-image generation, image-to-image. Brilliant. But think about context for a second. Another example here, pretty common in the tech industry, is predicting the price of Big Mac in 5 years' time or so. You ask ChatGPT that question, the answer we get is, I can't do it. I cannot predict. There's so many parameters that come into play. And here I would turn around and say, well, hang on a second. I'm in a presentation with 100 people. Can you please help me here? And at that point in time, what I've done is added context. And ChatGPT now says, you know what? I'm going to give you a figure. It's going to cost this much. But bear in mind all of these caveats. That's just going to still exist. And I would say, what if I actually kept inflation rate constant? And then at that point in time, ChatGPT gives me a further refined estimate. Now, the point here that I'm making is not that the price keeps changing. Absolutely not. The point is that I'm adding context to it. So think about it this way. You're having a natural conversation, right? By having that natural conversation, you say, what if it's this? What if it's that? That's exactly what you're doing with some of these tools. And that really is what drives everything. So if you think about expense reports for a second, sometimes what happens is we at Concur, we're not processing everything from a receipt, let's just say. And you're thinking, well, why can't Concur just go ahead and do this? So as an example, like I'm in Europe, we've got this supplier tax ID, a complicated 9 to 13 character, string. If you have to enter all of that, it's just a big burden, right, at that point in time. Or things like if you're claiming transportation, your trip is over 3 days. If you're claiming laundry or so on, some trivial piece of data which you feel, come on, Concur, you should know about this. This is pretty common. And when we do this, it takes a hit. It creates negativity. It creates frustration. And now we're aware that we cannot get people excited about expense reports, but what we really want is people saying, my expense report processing was a simple process, and more importantly, greatly automated. And I think this is where it gets more and more interesting, because we feel Gen AI is the tool that's going to help us get there. The power of data that we have here is unparalleled in the industry. And without data, any transaction is pretty basic. But as soon as we add data, we're adding richer context to it. That's what I was talking about earlier. So when we have that data, we effectively aim to alleviate the data burden on the user, data entry burden on the user. So we can fill out the expense report and turn things first-time compliant. Now, do you know the biggest source of frustration for our users? It's always failed reports, expense reports that come back to the user. And we want GenAI to get it right again and again. So why don't I show you a couple of examples on how we are working in this particular area. So I'm sure many of you have been asked for your boss saying, you're going on this trip, can you tell me how much this is going to cost? And that's a hard one, right? My boss used to ask me that all the time. What are my choices? Go on the internet, try to look for this information, or I would just go and look at my previous expense report if I've been there. And that's painful if you ask me. Now, in comes Request Assistant, and that's just newly announced this week itself. And with Request Assistant, we use GenAI to estimate the costs of air, hotel, and car services. And in future, we intend to go even better with those estimates and so on. So think about it. You're just going ahead and saying, well, I want to travel from New York to San Francisco on this date, coming back on a certain date. You get all of those results popped up. It's absolutely nice. And then you can go and further refine it if you want. And then it goes on to your approver, who can make better informed decisions. Expense report can essentially be created from it. So if we are talking about compliance, you're saying, hang on, this session is about compliance. What we also do is add that transcript from your policy along with those estimates. For example, business class is allowed if the flight is more than 8 hours. So that's what I call unburdening the user. Another example. Now, when we talk about employees knowing about travel and expense policy, that doesn't really happen. You can send them all kinds of documents. No one wants to read those documents. They're going on a trip, usually an international trip. It's like, don't know what my policy is. What you want at that point in time is a pocket assistant that can provide you with the information as and when you need it. And that's what policy search is all about. The ability to be able to ask a chatbot assistant, whether it's on web or mobile, to say, give me a little bit more information that I want right now. For example, I'm in Paris. I want to travel to Marseille. I want to take a train. Can I travel first class? Or can I take a gift from my host? When you add your travel and expense policy to Concur's chatbot assistant, what you're doing is creating a much richer interface for your users. And the end result of that is increased accuracy, reduced number of reports sent back, and fast reimbursement. And all of this is done with what we call first-time compliance, getting it right the first time itself. So Dmitry and Nathanael spoke a little bit about compliance. What is compliance? Why is AI important in this particular area? Various tools that we are using, various set of products and services around this. We spoke about Verify, Detect by Oversight, Tax Assurance by Blue Dot. And then I went in and spoke a little bit about Request Assistant, Policy Search. But this list is not exhaustive by any stretch of imagination. We're working on a lot more than just these set of products. And the important thing for us here is that we spend time with our customers to understand their business needs, how their business operates, and how data flows through the companies. And we use this capability to develop new solutions that then empower you and your users as you go about your business processes. And this user-centered approach is at the back of everything we do. And what we love about AI, and more importantly, GenAI, is that they're solving real problems that you're facing right now. And in closing, I would say that there is a job that needs to be done. And we use data to save steps and anticipate and resolve. And using AI, we do it in a way that feels natural and intuitive, lets you get back to business. Well, like I said, the potential of AI is limitless. AI plus good user experience will drive compliance further. And when that happens, we all win. Thank you.